You wake up to the sound of garbage trucks, same as every morning. But today, instead of heading to the local landfill, these trucks are driving toward the edge of a massive volcano. You watch as they back up to the rim, dump their load, and within seconds, the trash disappears into molten rock, heated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Gone, incinerated, no trace left behind. It sounds perfect. Too perfect. Because what if I told you that dumping your trash into a volcano could trigger explosions powerful enough to launch lava 85 meters into the air? What if that garbage didn't actually burn, but instead erupted back out, contaminating everything for miles? And what if this seemingly genius solution could actually make our pollution crisis 10 times worse? Welcome to the catastrophic reality of volcanic waste disposal. And trust me, it gets so much stranger than you think. Let's start with the numbers. Every single year, Americans generate 254 million tons of trash. That's not a typo. 254 million tons. Plastic bottles, food waste, electronics, furniture, diapers, everything. And that's just the United States. Globally, we're producing over 2 billion tons annually. Right now, most of it ends up in landfills where it sits for decades, leaching chemicals into the ground. Some gets recycled, but not nearly enough. And a portion is burned in incinerators, which create their own pollution problems. So when someone suggests using volcanoes as nature's ultimate garbage disposal, it almost makes sense.
Magma is hot. Really hot. Around 1100 degrees Celsius on average. Hot enough to melt steel. Hot enough to vaporize organic matter instantly. Why not just throw everything in and let the earth do the work? Here's why. First problem. Where exactly are you going to find a volcano willing to cooperate? There are about 1,500 potentially active volcanoes on Earth. Sounds like a lot, right? But most of them are in remote, inaccessible locations. Mountains, islands, the middle of the ocean. They're not conveniently located next to major cities where the trash is being generated. Imagine trying to transport millions of tons of garbage from New York City to the nearest active volcano. That's Mount Rainier in Washington State, over 2,000 miles away. You'd need a convoy of trucks running non-stop, burning fossil fuels the entire way, just to get the trash there. The carbon emissions alone would dwarf whatever environmental benefit you thought you were getting by incinerating the waste. And even if you could get your trash to a volcano, not just any volcano will work. You need something specific, a shield volcano. These are the gentle giants of the volcanic world. They erupt slowly, steadily, with lava that flows rather than explodes. Think of Hawaii's Kilauea or Mauna Loa. These volcanoes have lava lakes, pools of molten rock sitting at the surface, constantly churning, glowing, bubbling like Earth's own cauldron. Perfect for waste disposal, right? Except shield volcanoes are rare. Most volcanoes are stratovolcanoes, the angry, violent type. Mount Vesuvius, Mount St. Helens, Krakatoa. These things don't have lava lakes. They have magma chambers buried deep underground, building pressure until they explode with the force of nuclear bombs. You don't dump trash into a stratovolcano unless you want to trigger an eruption that buries you and your garbage under tons of ash and pyroclastic flows. So let's say you get lucky. You find a shield volcano with a nice accessible lava lake. You've got your trucks lined up ready to dump. You back up to the edge, release the load, and watch as tons of plastic bags, cardboard boxes, and rotting food tumble into the molten rock. What happens next? Explosions. Violent, unpredictable, deadly explosions. And this isn't speculation. We know this because scientists have tested it. In 2002, a group of Ethiopian researchers decided to see what would happen if they threw a 30-kilogram bag of organic waste into the Erta Ale lava lake.
one of the few permanent lava lakes on Earth. They expected the trash to sink and burn. Instead, the moment the bag hit the surface, the lava erupted. Steam shot into the air. Molten rock sprayed outward. The researchers had to run for their lives. Here's why that happened. Lava lakes aren't just pools of liquid rock. They have a thin, semi-solid crust on top. This crust acts like a cap, holding in heat and gases. When you drop something cold into the lava, like a bag of trash, it breaks through that crust. The sudden temperature difference causes the water trapped in the waste to flash into steam, instantly, explosively. And because lava is dense and viscous, that steam doesn't just escape gently. It blasts out, launching lava hundreds of feet into the air. In Hawaii, rockfalls into lava lakes have sent molten rock 85 meters high. That's the height of a 28-story building. Now imagine throwing not 30 kilograms, but 30 tons, or 300 tons. The explosions would be catastrophic. Lava raining down over a massive radius. Anyone within a mile would be in danger. The volcano itself could destabilize, triggering larger eruptions. But let's say we engineer around this problem. We build some kind of remote dumping system, conveyor belts, drones, whatever. We find a way to feed trash into the lava slowly, carefully, minimizing explosions. Does it work then? Does the trash actually burn? Not really. See, lava isn't hot enough to completely vaporize everything we throw away. Organic materials like food waste and paper, sure, those will burn. But plastics, metals, electronics, not so much. Plastics don't burn cleanly in lava. They melt, releasing toxic gases like dioxins and furans, some of the most poisonous chemicals known to humanity. These gases don't just disappear. They rise into the atmosphere, spreading for miles, contaminating air, water, soil. People living near the volcano would be breathing in carcinogens every single day. Cancer rates would skyrocket. Birth defects would become common. You'd create a public health disaster far worse than any landfill. And metals? Forget about it. Aluminum, steel, copper, they don't vaporize in lava. They melt, sure, but then they just sit there, pooling at the bottom of the lava lake or mixing with the molten rock. Eventually, when the volcano erupts, and it will erupt, all those metals get blasted out along with the lava. Now you've got toxic metal particles covering the landscape, poisoning crops, killing wildlife, contaminating drinking water. Congratulations. You've turned a volcano into a weapon of mass pollution. Let's talk about the environmental cost beyond the immediate explosions and toxic gases. Transporting millions of tons of trash to remote volcanoes requires fuel, lots of it. Trucks, ships, helicopters, all burning diesel or jet fuel, pumping carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Studies estimate that the carbon footprint of transporting waste long distances can exceed the emissions saved by disposing of it. So you're not solving the climate crisis, you're making it worse. Plus, volcanoes are often located in ecologically sensitive areas, national parks, wildlife reserves, indigenous lands. Building roads and infrastructure to support industrial-scale waste dumping would destroy habitats, displace communities, and cause irreversible environmental damage. You'd be sacrificing pristine ecosystems just to get rid of garbage that we shouldn't be producing in the first place. Now here's where it gets really insane. What if we tried to dump nuclear waste into volcanoes? After all, radioactive materials are some of the most dangerous, long-lasting pollutants we have. Spent nuclear fuel rods remain deadly for tens of thousands of years. Right now, we store them in heavily shielded containers buried deep underground. But what if we just dropped them into a volcano and let the lava melt them down? Sounds efficient. Except it's possibly the worst idea in human history. Nuclear waste doesn't just disappear when it melts. The radioactive isotopes remain radioactive. And when the volcano erupts, it launches that radioactive material into the atmosphere. You'd be creating a nuclear fallout event without detonating a single bomb. Radioactive particles would spread across continents, carried by wind currents, contaminating air, water, food supplies. Entire regions would become uninhabitable. Cancer rates would explode globally. You'd be condemning millions of people to slow, agonizing deaths from radiation poisoning. But okay, let's set aside nuclear waste. Let's focus on regular household trash. Even if we could somehow make volcanic disposal safe, which we can't, it still wouldn't solve the underlying problem. We're producing too much garbage. The real solution isn't finding better ways to hide our waste. It's reducing consumption, designing products that last longer, and creating circular economies where materials are reused instead of thrown away. Dumping trash into volcanoes is just another form of out of sight, out of mind thinking. It doesn't address the root cause. It just moves the problem somewhere else and makes it worse. And here's the kicker. We already have technology that does what volcanoes supposedly could, but better. Waste-to-energy incinerators. These facilities burn trash at extremely high temperatures, over 1,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to break down most materials. But unlike volcanoes, incinerators have filtration systems that capture toxic gases before they're released into the atmosphere. They convert the heat from burning waste into electricity, powering homes and businesses. Modern incinerators can reduce the volume of waste by up to 90%, leaving behind only a small amount of ash that can be safely disposed of. Countries like Sweden and Japan have been using this technology for decades. Sweden actually imports trash from other countries because their incinerators are so efficient. They need more fuel to keep generating power. They've turned garbage into a resource. So why don't we just do that everywhere? Because incinerators are expensive to build and politically unpopular. People don't want them in their neighborhoods, even though modern ones are far cleaner than older models. But compared to the logistical nightmare, environmental devastation, and deadly explosions of volcanic waste disposal, incinerators are a no-brainer. You get energy. You reduce landfill waste. You control emissions. And you don't have to transport garbage thousands of miles to some remote volcano that might literally blow up in your face. Let's run a final thought experiment. Imagine we ignore all the warnings. We decide to go full steam ahead with volcanic waste disposal. We build roads to Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. We set up dumping stations at the edge of the lava lake. We start feeding trash into the volcano 24/7. For a few months, it seems to work. The trash disappears into the molten rock. But then, the lava lake starts behaving strangely. The surface crust thickens from all the foreign materials. Pressure builds underneath. Gas pockets form. And one day, without warning, the volcano erupts. Not a gentle overflow, a violent explosion. Lava bombs the size of cars are launched miles into the air. Pyroclastic flows race down the mountainside at hundreds of kilometers per hour, incinerating everything in their path. Toxic gases blanket the region. Thousands die. Millions are displaced. The Hawaiian Islands are declared a disaster zone, and all because we thought we could outsmart nature by using a volcano as a garbage can. The truth is, volcanoes are not our friends. They're not tools. They're reminders of the raw, untamed power of the planet we live on. They operate on timescales and forces far beyond human control. Trying to exploit them for waste disposal is like trying to tame a hurricane or drain the ocean. It's hubris, it's dangerous, and it's completely unnecessary when we already have safer, smarter alternatives. So what's the real solution?
Stop making so much trash. Redesign our economy. Invest in recycling and composting infrastructure. Support waste-to-energy technology. Hold corporations accountable for the mountains of single-use plastic they produce. Demand better. Because dumping our problems into a volcano, literally or metaphorically, has never worked. And it never will. The only way forward is to face our waste crisis head-on, with science, innovation, and a commitment to actually solving the problem instead of just hiding it. That's the real answer. Not volcanoes, not space. Just us, taking responsibility for the mess we've made.